So I'm at work, okay? And for the past few months, I've been in dialogue with the rabbi of an Orthodox synagogue and his son, okay? For ages, they've been wanting me to basically be part of their congregation because, quite literally, I'm like the equivalent of the prodigal son, okay? So they want me back in the fold. They wanted me back in the fold yesterday, right? So Passover rolls around, and the rabbi sends his son with a matzah and with a piece of matzah for Passover, and an invitation to basically attend Passover services, which I couldn't do because it would have conflicted with my work schedule anyways. So I said, look, I'd be interested in possibly attending one of your Shabbat services. And then I kind of remembered something. Why I have kind of like actively avoided all forms of organized religion for like the vast majority of my entire adult life. So I'm trying to find a reason why I should do this. Basically, devil's advocate, as it were. And the only thing I can come up with is this, to basically show my Gentile wife, the world in which I came from. Because, see, my wife was the daughter of a Southern Baptist preacher. So I'm figuring out maybe, just maybe, this might be a good educational experience. And then I remember that during the course of worship in an Orthodox synagogue, the males and the females are put in separate rooms. They are basically sequestered from each other. And I'm thinking to myself, this would be the social equivalent of throwing my wife into a swimming pool full of great white sharks and her being that sole piece of caviar. So I noped out of it. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. And a couple months go by, and Rabbi's son drops by, and he's like, would you like to pray with me? And finally, okay, I know I'm not going to be going to the synagogue for the obvious reason, because there was only one viable reason, and I've just kind of noped out of that one to begin with, right? So I decide, okay, cards on table time. And I basically told him, look, if I actively accept one theological mindset, this means I'm effectively othering hundreds of others. And, I was born and raised to basically love my Jewish brothers and sisters, my Christian brothers and sisters, my Hindu brothers and sisters, my Islamic brothers and sisters, and my atheist brothers and sisters. So, basically, I strongly subscribe to the belief that every good deed I do will basically add a leaf in the book of the tree of life for when I do in fact pass on, and I do love God, but I'm sorry, I can't attend your synagogue, nor can I attend anyone else's church, mosque, or shrine. The girl next to me, she had to fight every impulse possible to not crack up laughing, because she's never seen me like that, or seen such a situation so surreal. But this is kind of where it all kind of ties into my origin story. For starters, my folks had me at a very old, advanced age. They were both in their 40s. Okay. There were some complications in the pregnancy. I was a breech birth, and the obstetrician had apparently too many highballs at the country club before showing up to the delivery room. So when I made my debut into the world, it kind of ended up with the umbilical cord wrapped around my throat. This resulted in oxygen deprivation, which ultimately culminated in a diagnosis of cerebral palsy. Now, in the early 70s, there was one prescribed treatment or one general consensus among the neurology specialists of the day, which was basically you institutionalize people with CP. CP affects the central nervous system. It doesn't affect cognitive abilities, just basically how quickly your reaction time is, or motor coordination, things of this nature. But they didn't know it at that time. So the basic belief was just, warehouse them in these mental health facilities. Forget they exist. There's no helping them. You're basically wasting time, emotion, and, emotional strength and resources in an effort to basically take care of this child at home. So you just ship them off to a state-run facility. Now, in 1974, Raul de Rivera did an expose on one such facility. It was called Willowbrook. And basically, any kind of mistreatment and neglect that can conceivably happen occurred at Willowbrook. So what ended up happening there was, this story made its rounds on the news, and my parents had that diagnosis and that recommendation, and they basically decided that they were going to flip people off. They were going to flip off the medical community and see if they could find, an alternate treatment. And ultimately, they found this institute over in Philadelphia called the Institute for the Achievement of Human Potential that strongly believed that by rerouting undamaged portions of the brain to the parts that needed it, that you can effectively have a normally functioning child.
How old were you when they found this place?
I think it was about 3 or 4. In order to effectively do the rerouting, it required massive quantities of sensory stimuli. So you had various forms of exercises, like learning how to creep and crawl across the floor, or swing across monkey bars, or memorize the names of plants, animals, minerals, names of flags, pieces of art. By the age of 6, I was taught to read above, what was considered normal's reading level. Okay, now with all this being said, my parents also had their own little level of pushback in the form of the Hawthorne Gospel Church. Yeah, kids, I'm calling out names. But, people would stop my parents in the grocery store saying, it is God's will that he remain like this. At which you've got to realize a couple of things. Number one, my father was used to defying the odds. Okay, he was a United States Marine, frozen chosen Korean War. Big fan of the whole, John Wayne, Macho Man. If society tells me to do one thing, I'm going to, basically go in the other direction. My mother was a Helen Gurley Brown, Gloria Steinem age feminist. Okay, and was basically, a feminist before most people even heard what the phrase feminist was. You're gonna go up against these people. No, not happening. They're very headstrong, and although they might not have loved each other as much, they did love each other. They just had really major problems expressing it, but they never had problems expressing the love of their kids. Well, me specifically.
Do you know if your siblings felt alienated at all because of the attention you were getting for your cerebral palsy?
Yeah, I will definitely say that. I can say that unequivocally without a shadow of a doubt. Both of my parents are dead. They passed on. Okay? There are still brothers and sisters who I do not speak with. They haven't reached out to me. I haven't reached out to them. Basically, but that was the case even before then.
Yeah.
When my grandparents died, it was like the center fell out of that family. And next thing you know, you're looking at essentially warring factions. Well, not even warring factions, just like totally wildly varying paradigms of childhood. Why, what happened to one set of brothers and sisters definitely did not occur with another group of sisters, or did it occur with me. My world and my childhood was vastly different. It was so different from my 5 siblings, that nobody really communicates.
Yeah. Do they connect with each other, do you know?
Not really. I mean, they do up to a point. They're thick as thieves, and then one day somebody does something that the other doesn't, like, and next thing you know, they don't speak for years, and,
Yeah.
And it's, one of the situations where it's like, I consider myself an only child. And, it's kind of hurtful. I mean, I have one sister I still speak with, and it's time for her and I to basically have a deeper look into that past that even I, that I've been trying to avoid because up until then I really didn't think it concerns me, but
yeah,
as it gets to a point, as it gets closer and closer to write my memoirs, this is going to be the rock I'm going to have to overturn.
I can imagine that could be very difficult. Do you feel, when you think about your siblings and your lack of connection, do you ever feel guilt because of the attention that was directed towards you?
No. I know that sounds terrible, but my parents both instilled me with a major sense of confidence. There has been times when I've actually called out siblings. Saying, look, I know you believe I'm the union of a marriage that should have never taken place. I actually said that to my half-sister. And she was stock still silent. There was not a lot she could say to that. But at the end of the day, I also saw her, but years later, I ended up seeing her side of the story as well. My parents, how should I describe them? They were all about marriage. They were so about marriage that they did it multiple times.
I think that's what happens.
My mom was on her 3rd marriage when she met my father. My father basically left his first marriage to marry my mother. Well, as I said, I think they loved each other very much. They just really sucked at expressing it. And I think that largely comes to the fact they really didn't love themselves as much. Or, how should I put it? Or they thought they did, but they really didn't.
I think that's a lot of people.
But the Dolman Project, the Institute for the Achievement of Human Potential, consisted of 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. In order for basically my parents to maintain a full-time work schedule, this meant getting a cadre of volunteers to get me through the program, as well as basically whomever they could rope into basically helping me out, whether it's a sister or a brother or what have you. Okay. And you're dealing with a lot of different religious backgrounds. Okay. A lot of, different sexual preferences, different gender identities, different socioeconomic backgrounds. And you learn at an early age to judge a human being by their heart of hearts, instead of whatever label society arbitrarily decides to give them. Now, around age 5 or so, I basically told my parents, what am I doing here? I'm not brain damaged. And so concluded my time on that program. However, Doman made a suggestion that I be sent to a school that taught a second language. So my parents decided that they would go to, basically send me to a yeshiva or a Hebrew school. After all, we are of Jewish descent and Jewish heritage. I could learn more about my Jewish heritage and learn a second language. It would tick both boxes, Simple as that. At least that's what they were thinking. My time at Yavna Academy in Paterson, New Jersey, and at the time it was in Paterson, basically taught me about the dark side of, religion and belief.
How so?
The Old Testament believes that basically being Jewish means that you're part of the chosen people. You get your secret chosen decoder ring, you get the whole freaking 9. If you're the chosen people, why the hell are you bullying each other on the schoolyard? And why aren't people in authority basically not addressing that problem? Instead, they're turning away. Okay, I'm the retarded kid now, right? He wants to do everything he can to blend in, so what's he do? He starts overeating. That way people have something new to make fun of. Okay, because that's how it goes with kid logic, right? It's figured I'm the fat, slow, retarded kid who's routinely being made fun of. Meanwhile, in one of the prayer books, there's 2 lines in which I take major exception to. And the first one is, thank God I was not born a woman. Thank God I was not born a Gentile. So, we could still be barbaric. We could still treat each other like, okay? But hey, let's brush that under the rug because we're special. We're the unicorns. We're the chosen people. And didn't compute. Based on what I had gone through, what I had survived, and who had helped me, none of this freaking computed. And I was miserable, and I was failing my classes. And I had teachers telling me that I would never amount to anybody in this life. Okay? I was basically, and there's a little running gag, because a friend of mine sent me a newspaper clipping of my 3rd grade class at Yavna. And there was former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, who was one of my bullies. And my first response was, great, now I can fat shame the Palestinians. But, finally, I ultimately made a deal with my father. I get bar mitzvahed, and that's the last I have to see of the inside of a synagogue. So I did it. I did the bar mitzvah. With a lot of kicking, screaming, wailing, and gnashing of teeth, but I got it done. Got it done, wrote the thank you notes, and did not see the inside of a synagogue ever since. And that's pretty much, that's all she wrote as far as, religions. I don't accept Judaism, I don't accept Christianity.
Since then, have you found yourself seeking other religions, trying to find a place?
Oh, yeah. I had a brief dalliance with paganism. Wicca, specifically. Probably out of all of them, it's probably the least dogmatic. But you see, the thing is this. It isn't the religions. All religions look good on paper.
Yeah.
It's more of a case of, who are the practitioners? The guy I was learning the craft from ended up there was a lot of allegations leveled against him involving abuse, and things of that nature. SA. Yes, we don't want to demonetize this.
It's never going to be monetized.
It's never.
Go for
Okay,
it.
so I'm saying it's sexual abuse. Anyway, So, that being said, I've decided to just study it independently, and I did for a while. And I also studied it a second time from a woman who would later be the lead singer in a band I played in. And that was probably the most rewarding for one reason. For somebody who's not at all into organized religion, things worked out well with her. And basically worked out well for me. Because it was, how should I put it? We all joined that band for a reason that was not basically the traditional reasons for being in a dark wave band. We were in a band, and what ended up happening is her and the bass player fell in love. They're married. They have kids. I'm very happy for them. It took me a while to get there, but I basically learned, basically looking back at that whole situation, ultimately that's, that kind of informed my spirituality currently. Things will happen if you basically exert enough energy in a specific direction.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes these things will happen in the most inexplicable manner. God works in mysterious ways. And I'm in full agreement with the concept that maxim, he works in such mysterious ways, then why the heck is everybody and their dog trying to do some form of playbook?
Yeah. People want a formula.
Exactly. No, don't do the formula. I mean, there's one or two things that, that some of the holy books got right. They're treating people how you yourself want to be treated. I mean, heck, I live that every day of my life. Good things do happen to good people. It takes longer time. Miracles happen, but usually 9 times out of 10 if you yourself are doing the legwork. That's my big thing right there. You want something to happen, it's a good idea to pray about it, but, also take some positive action steps.
Yeah.
People talk about sacrifices, covenants. If you want to lose 50 pounds, you can definitely pray about losing the 50 pounds. But you're going to have a covenant that involves basically caloric intake and regular physical activity.
Yeah. I would actually suggest to somebody trying to lose weight that they don't pray about that, because that might mentally offload the effort onto, this thing that is not you.
As long as they take the other ingredients into account and don't hurt anyone else, rock on with your bad self. I mean that's where I'm at with it. Just rock on with your bad self. Every spell has some form of some form of reagent, whether it be a specific colored candle or incense or or a confirmation or one of those communion wafers or the Kiddush wine or what have you, or the blessing of the candles during Shabbat or all the religion. You know, the religious trappings differ. Okay? But, you know, but at the end of the day, there's always going to be some kind of component there. Some kind of sacrifice. And sometimes that sacrifice does not have to be the communion wafer. Or it does not have to be the Kiddush wine or the blessing of the candles. Or basically the crystal or the incense or what have you. Sometimes it's just positive steps of getting up in the morning and getting your butt to the gym. Or doing that 2-mile walk to work with God.
So tell me a little bit more about your physical therapist. You haven't really mentioned anything about that.
Well, in terms of the cerebral palsy, basically it wasn't really we did have PT in the beginning before the Doman program. And it got me to a point of walking, but stiff jointed, kind of like Frankensteinian. It was not enough of a, it was not enough. It was not enough to pass me off as normal. All I wanted back then was to be passed off as normal.
It's overrated.
I would not learn that until years later. Okay, I built a community by not being normal.
Honestly, I think that's the easiest way to do it.
And it's probably going to anger a lot of my community members. But, those people who accept me for what I am, they're parts of my community. Those who just, did it on a superficial basis, they liked me for the wrong reason. That tends to be a trend, by the way, in the Jewish faith. Ever realize that most Christians basically have a certain love of Jews for one reason? Because we take a very large role in their book of Revelations. It's liking us for the wrong reasons. It's like liking me because I'm a good cross-country skier. By the way, in the spirit of transparency, you're not going to get me on that mountain.
So I'm wondering, I gotta ask this, is your voice related to your cerebral palsy?
The voice, the low rattle?
Yeah.
No, that's 37 years worth of smoking, which I quit about 4 years ago.
Okay. Congrats.
Yeah.
Good job.
That came as a result of COVID and a fear of basically not knowing the difference between smoking a pack a day versus actually getting the Ronas. So
fear is useful.
But fear will only get you so far.
Yeah.
Motivation is ultimately what gets you.
Yeah.
If you're going to make any broad and sweeping change to your lifestyle, there has to be some kind of replacement for it. I was able to buy a fairly decent gaming computer with the money that I saved from no longer smoking. And healthy decisions are like potato chips. You don't end at just one. You have enough air in your lungs, so guess what? You're now in a better position to engage in more physical activity. So instead of walking one way to work, I'm walking 2 ways. Then it's diet. Maybe changing diet. Maybe I should be a little bit better about my diabetes medication. Maybe I should go to the gym. Little by little, if you're trying to get something out of your life, you've got to basically be tuned into the positive changes. Every day that I basically don't feel like going to the gym, I look at my abs. They're not six packs yet, but I'm seeing the outline. And that's pretty badass.
Mm-hmm. So how do you feel about your cerebral palsy now?
It's what made me who I am today. It made me a lot more compassionate. It made me more empathetic. It made me side with the underdog. It made me a better person than I would have been without it.
What do you think of yourself?
As a person, I like me. I can look at myself in the mirror and say, yeah, why? Because, the lives I impact on a daily basis, the positivity I impact on a daily basis, giving people simple, decisive acts of kindness that positively impact their day. At work, I see a client, and the first thing I tell them is, it's nice to see you, or I haven't seen you in a while. How have you been? A couple weeks ago, I'm listening to this podcast on NPR called This American Life, and the author's name is David Sedaris, and he's in France. And one of the shopkeepers says to him, I haven't seen you in a while. And he was like over the freaking moon with that, because somebody actually remembered him. People want to be remembered. Mm-hmm. People want to do that. People want, like when you appeal to their better angels in the beginning of a dialogue, because 9 times out of 10, they will rise to the occasion.
People want to feel recognized or appreciated or meaningful in some way.
Exactly. And, who else is going to do that? Who else is going to do that in a retail-based customer service environment?
So you work in retail?
Yep. Who else is going to do these things? Who else is going to make these people? And not just the customer base, but your team and your bosses. Mm-hmm. And the people around you.
That's one thing I've talked to my therapist about, is that she said she even has to remind herself of this sometimes, but even if you're not affecting somebody else with your job, your coworkers are people too.
Right. And besides, the secret to a good customer service is a good team, is a strong team. Spend your time strengthening your team. Tell people you're proud of them. I had the good fortune of training 2 cashiers who would later turn out to be my managers later on down the road. And there was one girl, when she was first starting out, she was like afraid of her own shadow and spoke in a really, really tiny voice. A couple days ago, I see her with some people from the home office, and she is speaking with them with confidence and eloquence and a voice of authority that blew me the hell away. And I had to take her aside and go, you have no idea how freaking proud I am of you. This is how to answer your question, how cerebral palsy touched my life. Was having the emotional intelligence to see how some of your actions, not all of them, but how a lot of them, end up affecting the lives of those around you.
Yeah. Do you ever wear yourself out by being friendly and uplifting?
Oh, yeah. I spent today sleeping in. Sleeping in, vegging out, watching YouTube videos. hanging out with a cat. That's, you need that little bit of time to recharge the batteries.
Yeah. No, nobody's an island, and nobody can be, life of the party all the time.
And I'm a bit of an introvert. I will be honest. I just play extrovert really well. I LARP as an extrovert. Then I go home. The wife can barely get 2 words out of me.
So, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to talk about, or anything that you want to say that you think people need to hear?
Yeah. At the end of the day, you treat people as you yourself want to be treated. And don't do it under, basically create a party environment for the here and now. Create a good environment for the here and now. Not because you're afraid of going to hell or because you want to go to heaven. Do it for the here and now. The afterlife will take care of itself. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Whatever else we may or may not have, we definitely have this.
Yeah. That would be it, really.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.